it's LaJune with LaJune Singleton LLC, Fitness, Health, Mindset, Nutrition, and Wellness Podcast. You guys, I have a great guest in store. I've had her on before. She's also was on my January All About You event, educating, teaching people about how to be fulfilled in life. So she is a fulfillment coach and owner of Nacho Average Pro. Thank you for joining me again, Jessica Malone. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good to be back.
All right. Can you give a background on yourself?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, fulfillment coach, and specifically, I work with high achievers. I myself am a high achiever and have carried the weight of what that looks like in my life. And so I work with high achievers to achieve fulfillment after they've done all the things that they feel were expected of them. So I really help people identify what's most important, what do they want to put their focus on, and how can they build their life to support and achieve that.
So you just started off with like a question that many want to know. Why is it that high achievers don't feel fulfilled? Because we're accomplishing so much. We're trying, we're getting so much average of income. Why is it that we still don't feel fulfilled?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think that it's because most of our achievements were dictated by someone else. Maybe early in life, they started with family. Maybe we play sports, right? And so there's like certain metrics that we have to meet in college. We think about school, right? What does it look like to get good grades? And so a lot of the things that were important to us we're not always about us, right? High achievers are very smart. And so education is a great place to show that intellect, but it also can be utilized in a lot of other ways. And I think so many of us have just funneled it into education, funneled it into a corporate career. And looking up, in our 20s, 30s, we realize, and beyond really, but we realize, this wasn't really like what I wanted, but it's what I thought I had to do. It's what I thought I had to do to like thrive and be successful and accomplished.
So one thing I've seen a lot of, and I personally experienced, which I had to learn to rethink, is we think happiness comes from things.
Mm-hmm.
Where we feel that we have to make a certain amount of money, we have to have a certain lifestyle or a certain relationship, but we're missing all that with ourselves. So is that some things that you touch on with your clients?
Yeah, for sure. I think that that's where everything starts. And it's interesting when we go through this process, we don't realize sometimes the weight that we carry from all of this stuff. Like you mentioned, I have the good job. I made good grades in school. I got the kind of apartment that people with my job and my salary should have. Right. And it's like, but that is such a burden that I don't realize I'm carrying because I just don't think about the fact that all of this was for the sake of other people, right? This job is to make sure my parents feel proud. And this apartment is to make sure I'm living up to whatever lifestyle expectations come with my job, with my industry. And so I think, yes, that is something that my clients and I have to touch on because it's like, how else can you release everything you've done for everyone else without first recognizing what you need for yourself?
So can you kind of talk about from your own experience, how and why you got into the fulfillment coaching?
Yeah. So for me, it's a very personal story and it's a part of my personal journey. Part of how I help my clients is through the process of decluttering. And that comes from my own personal experience. So back in 2017, I had this, I feel like I always tell people I had this like quarter life crisis. I was like 25, and I just started to have these feelings of like, man, is this all that there is? I make good money. I have a good job. I live in a nice place. I have, the latest and greatest gadgets. Like I have all this stuff that people aspire to have. And I just don't really feel like happy at the end of the day. I'm not excited about the life that I live. And so I just started doing some, I guess, inner work and exploration. And that led me down this path towards learning about minimalism, which is all about, letting go of your possessions, living this very simplistic life. At least on the outside, that's what it's about. And what I realized through that journey is that it's not just about letting go of stuff, but really letting go of like those shoulds, letting go of the things you feel that you have to have so that you can really have everything that you want to have. And that changed my life. I lost in the first year, I lost like 30 pounds. I saved $10,000. I launched my business. And so I really started to understand just this concept of space, right? And like, we can say that we want something, we can recognize that we are not fulfilled, but it's not until we create space for what we want and learn how to let go, that we can really step into that.
So why do you think it's so hard for people to let things go? Because, people lose weight, prime example, and they hold on to the clothes. And I get that personally from my clients, like, well, I have to keep it because I could get back to this weight, which is self-sabotaging thinking because you're already saying, I'm going back to that place.
Right.
So for you, what do you think it is that people feel like I can't let go? Why are
Yeah,
they holding on?
it just boils down to identity. And like I said, I work with high achievers. That's an identity. And I don't think that we have to shed an entire identity to step into what we want, but we have to shed the parts of it that are not serving us. Like I still consider myself to be a high achiever, although my life has changed drastically. I'm achieving in the ways that really matter to me, right? But I wasn't doing that before. And there is an identity that I carried of, just who I thought I had to be at work. I thought I had to be someone who wanted to work for this big corporation. And like, that was the end all be all goal, because that was just the identity that I had my whole life, was this idea of whatever the American dream was, and I think as you think about your clients as well, it's like, how long had they been that size? That is the identity that they are most comfortable with. And it's scary to let that go because we don't really know what's on the other side of that, right? It's like, I'd rather hold on to what I know, even if it's not serving me, than to create a void and have this unknown aspect to me, to my life, and not knowing like what is actually going to fill it.
Mm. Okay, we'll be right back after this break, and we're going to ask Jessica about, what does clutter look like for people? We are back. So, Jessica, what does cluttering look like for people? Because, for myself, I think of clutter is your bedroom looks like a tornado has gone through it. Your car looks like, you just got in and just start throwing stuff around.
Yeah.
So what does clutter look like, and why does clutter show up for us?
Yeah. So I think clutter can take a lot of different forms. What you described, I think, is what most of us think of when we think about clutter: just stuff everywhere, right? Piles of things, stuff that's like broken, stuff we should have gotten rid of a long time ago. But I think for the high achiever specifically, it looks a little different. For the high achiever, clutter is often hidden. So you don't walk into their house and often see a mess, or the mess, if it's there, is in a place that you never really get to go into. So it might be there's a mess in their bedroom, you never really get to go there, right? Or maybe there's clutter in their living room, but it's all hidden behind cabinets and drawers, right? And in some instances, it can also look very organized. I think people often mistake being organized for not being cluttered, but you can easily organize stuff that's not serving you. So for the high achiever, it really isn't that, oh my gosh, my life is completely out of whack scenario most of the time. It's I've got all of this stuff that I've held on to because there's an identity that I think I need to carry, and I just make it look nice and neat. And that is a metaphor for the life that they live as well. And that's why I say I think it's important for us to recognize that clutter takes different forms, because For someone who is maybe more like a hoarder, right? Their life is going to take a certain form. For the high achiever, they live a life where they feel like they're hiding, and their clutter in their home, it is a reflection of that. So, by learning how to declutter, learning how to showcase what really matters to them in their home, they start to recognize what that might feel like in their life as well. And that's how change happens from not just their home, but really trickling into their life.
So with your clients, have you seen like that hesitation, that fear of, letting go, of decluttering, of learning how to form new habits? And what steps do you take with them to let them know that, what, it's okay? Or is that something that you allow them to incorporate for themselves when they're ready?
Yeah, so that it's twofold. So yes, they do experience fear. Most of the time, whenever it goes up against something that they've learned from their parents, that's when I see the most struggle, right? Like I said, most high achievers are achieving things that, their parents instilled in them from a very young age. And so whenever we get up against like something they feel they should have, maybe my mom said I should have this, or my dad said this is how I should build a home, right? Build a life. That's where we see that internal struggle happen. And I give my clients a framework that allows them to work through that for themselves. So a lot of times when we think about decluttering, you hear people say like, you should have like a keep, toss, donate, sell pile. And I coach my clients through a totally different kind of perspective. And we focus on yes, no, and maybe, right? Because I'm not really focused on you getting the stuff out. That's a part of the process. But really it's about you recognizing what feels aligned for me, what doesn't, and where do I feel this kind of struggle, right? And that's where it's like, yes is like what is aligned, no is what is not. And maybe it's like, I need to really sit down and think about what kind of life I want to build, and if this thing is a reflection of that, And so clutter is really just a feedback loop for us. It provides information that we can then go and say, man, I was holding on to that 28-piece glass set because I felt like as a woman, I should have that. I should be prepared to entertain people at any given moment. But then to realize, you know what, I prefer to go to my friend's house. I prefer not to have 28 people at my house. I prefer not to clean up after 28 people. You know what I mean? And this is a true story. So I feel that
Yes.
because that was me. But it's like you need that time to process that, to decide what kind of life you want, and then to let go accordingly. So that's really how I help them. Less focus on where is this going, and more focus on, is this aligned? Is this misaligned? And what metrics or guidelines do I have for alignment and misalignment in my life?
So what you said is quite powerful. And I just think about people who follow what their parents said or what society has told them how their life should look or how things should be for them, or emulating someone on television or something like that.
Mhm.
um how hard is it for someone to change that whole behavior and mindset?
Yeah, it varies. It varies person to person. But one thing that I really love about the work that I do is that it boils back down to mindset. And what I see is that the faster people are willing to accept that they want to shed a mindset, the faster that change can happen. I've had clients who, like me, in 6 months, they lose like 30 pounds, 40
Mm,
pounds. I've had clients launch a business in 6 months. It took me a year to do that. But I've seen them do it in 6 months. I had a client save $25,000 in 6 months.
mhm.
So what I recognize is like when we start to recognize how we are curating a life and the mindset that keeps us ingrained in, then it's like either I want that or I don't, or either I'm not ready to let go of that or I am. Right. And like the people who have reached that point in their life where they're like, I'm absolutely not willing to do this anymore, that changes fast. For those that are not, it's still fast, I would say, in the grand scheme of things, but it's probably more like a year they start to see big changes rather than like 6 months, which, you know, when you think about it, some people go their whole lives without making a change. So that is still quick. That is still quick. But for me, it's like, that's really the benchmark. If they're really ready, 6 months, not yet, 12 months.
So when people come to you, what fulfillment that they're really looking for, or do they know when they come? Or is it something that they figure out in the process of working with you?
A little bit of both as well. And I love that you asked that question, because that's just something I've been thinking about a lot, as I think about the work that I do. And like, oftentimes when I talk about my work, I talk about the big results, you know, 25K, 30 pounds lost, launch a business. But the reality is that, you know, like my clients that launch businesses, for many of them, it's not just, I want to be an entrepreneur. It's about legacy. You know, I want to build a legacy. I want to do something for myself because I've never really done that before, right? I've always done what other people wanted me to do. You know, the clients that lose weight, it's like, it's not just, I want to look good, or I want to post like swimsuit photos on Instagram. It's really, I want to have the energy to create the life I want. You know, I feel weighed down, literally, and I want to have the energy for the life that I desire to lead, you know, and same with money savings. It's like, I don't want to just have money in the bank. There is something that I want to put out into the world. And until I get my finances together, I can't do that, you know? And so I think those are the things that my clients are thinking about: legacy, relationships, family, and purpose. You know, that is what they really want. And those other things, those more superficial sounding goals, are just a means to an end.
Yeah, because you hear so much of, now that people want to leave something to their families, to their kids, they want to donate or give back to the community, where it's not that I really don't have it and I'm trying to figure out how I can give without putting myself in debt.
Mhm.
So those things are really big. Looking at, the type of clients that you work with, is there, a certain, when someone comes to you, what is the process of them working with you?
Yeah, so we usually start off with a call, and I just learn a little bit about them and what, you know, what's going on, what do they want to accomplish. I think that that's really important, just so they can get to know me, you know, especially if they're new to me, they haven't been following me or on my list for a while, but also so I can really understand like what they want and ensure that we resonate with each other. You know, I think it's really interesting because when I started my coaching business, I didn't realize that how important that was. But now it's like, I really want to feel connected
Yes.
to what you do, to what you want, and in some instances, inspired, you know? And so that is how things start now, is just, you know, do we really connect? Do I really get you? Do we kind of share a story? And then from there, you know, we have a 3-day weekend together. So the first day is really virtual. You do some online stuff that I have you do for mindset work. And then we get together live for 2 days and I help you declutter your first room. And you learn the decluttering process. You learn how to pull that information and insight from your stuff. And then my favorite part really is not actually the decluttering. It is like what happens after the fact, and helping my clients identify what I call their freedom framework, and how they are going to maintain not just this home with less clutter, but a life with less clutter, right? When we start recognizing what the stuff represents, that translates into our life. And so I help them build out that framework of what does that look like? You know, how will I know when clutter arises in my life? How will I sort through that? And that, I think that is the best part. And then we're together for 6 months. So I help them work through that process as they're learning, as they're testing, and as they're trying to apply these new concepts in their life.
I think for a lot of people, they don't know the time frames that's needed for change, because, some people come and they're like, well, I just need 1 month. So can you explain to the listeners why 6 months is a relevant time frame for change?
Yeah. So, it's so funny that you say that because you're right. Like, and I think that decluttering is such a great practice from that perspective as well, realizing how much time you really need to invest in change, in shifting your life. And I always tell my clients, we have to start small. So I give them that runway so that it's not this complete overhaul, right? You wouldn't try to like change your entire life all at once. So we have to emulate that in the coaching. You need to practice making small shifts and sustaining them. So for my clients, it's like the first 30 days is just managing their home. Let's just learn how to sustain this environment, which is really saying, let's learn how to sustain this new identity in your home. And then we start learning more about the habits that need to shift. And that's a 60-day process. And then they start really seeing that application to their life, if it's business, weight loss, money savings, whatever. And that's another 90 days. So we really chunk it down because the only way to create sustainable change is to do it in small bits, and to only spend 30 days with you. It's like, I would be setting you up for failure. Nobody changes their life that fast.
This is definitely true because, I'm pretty sure you've had people come and they're like, well, I only need a month. What are you talking about? And I've had that, and it's like, what were you doing before me? Because that's the thing. If you weren't utilizing these tips and skills before me, how are you going to be able to do it in 30 days?
Right. Yeah. And I have so many clients who are like, oh, I'm gonna get my whole bedroom and closet and bathroom done in like a weekend. And then we work together and they're like, wow, I needed 8 hours just to do my closet. I need 8 hours just to get through my bathroom. And we talk about that. I help them actually build out a scale, like, all right, let's break it down. Let's break down the room into small parts. And I give them an equation. I'm like, put your numbers in. Let's actually see how long this is going to take. And they realized, like, the reason I couldn't get started was because I was biting off more than I can chew. And again, I think that's true in any aspect of our life. We're trying to change our workout routine, change our eating habits, change our friends. We're trying to like change all of this stuff at once. Like, it doesn't work like that.
No, not at all. And if it was that simple, we wouldn't have done it a long time ago.
Everybody
So,
would be doing
and everybody's life would just be perfect and happy and full of joy. So
exactly.
yes. So what do you think some of the things are for, your clients and also people in general when it comes to procrastination?
Ooh, in terms of like, what do you think keeps them? What do I think keeps them stuck?
Yeah.
So it's going to sound really like interesting, I guess, but I think that it is them living in the mindset. And I want to like expand on that a little bit because we live in our heads, right? Like that is true, but also what happens in our mind is mirrored in our homes. So we are not just living in our heads, we are like living in our heads, right? Like that, whatever belief system is keeping me stuck, for most people, it boils down to not feeling like enough, right? It sounds different for different people. I'm not adequate. I'm not capable of trying new things. I'm not capable of doing stuff that hasn't been dictated to me. It sounds different for every person, but it always boils down to not believing they are enough. And they literally live in that environment. And I think that is what keeps us stuck. We're not just stuck in our heads, we're stuck in our homes, which are a reflection of our mindset.
And another question, perfectionism. I know for me, for years, that was the issue. Everything had to be so perfect. And it is hard to release that because you want everything to look a certain way. You don't want to just put anything out. So when it comes to clients, or also if you experience that, how were you able to shift that, and how do you work with clients with shifting that? Because we've been taught that everything has to be perfect.
Right. Yeah. So that is also where like working with high achievers is so interesting, because the reality that I had to learn and that I try to share with my clients is like high achievers don't know how to put out something that is low quality. They don't. It's like not in their DNA. For a high achiever, our like 70% could be somebody else's 110. Like when we're not trying, we're still putting out something really amazing. And that is what I've had to recognize in my own life. I have absolutely struggled with perfectionism, and I share that with my clients as well. Like, really think about what you have done with your life. When have you ever done anything subpar? Maybe not perfect, but nobody's perfect, right? But when have you ever done anything subpar, And like, we are so used to performing that we struggle with the idea of failing, right? We have performed
Mm,
so much in our life that it is uncomfortable for us to try something new. But we got good at making grades by studying. We got good at playing sports by practicing. We got good at everything we got good at by practicing. So I bring those two ideas to my clients. Like, one, you're never going to put out anything subpar. Let's just start there. But two, you got to a place where everything was phenomenal because you practiced. You were just practicing while your parents were watching you, or you had a coach, right? You weren't doing it for yourself, but that same concept applies. You still need to practice, but you're never going to do anything terrible.
right. And you mentioned about performing, and I think for people for so many years have been a different person. Like they have been acting all their lives where they have no clue of who the heck they are, because they try to be everything to everybody, but they don't really know who they are as a
Mhm.
person.
Yeah, that's so true too. And I think again, that's where decluttering is such a powerful practice, because when you let go physically, you start to see like, wow, this living room wouldn't be as full if it weren't for all the stuff I thought I had to have. This bedroom would feel a lot more empty if it wasn't for all this stuff I thought I had to have. And I think that realization, seeing it in the physical form, helps you to understand, wow, there would be so much room in my life if I wasn't doing what other people told me, which means I have to figure out how to fill it. And that's scary. That's scary if you've been acting, right? Because you don't know, but that is where all the possibility lies. Like, you'll never fill it. You'll never get to that place without letting go. But I think decluttering gives people that physical representation of like, wow, I really have curated a whole life around what other people thought I should do or have.
Mm. So Jessica, can you tell us what's next, so where people can find you, any specials or programs that you have coming up?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me at nachoaveragefro.com. That's NACHO, like the chip, averagefro.com. You can also find me at Nacho Average Fro on Instagram. But I would say the best place to connect with me and learn about what I do is by joining my email list. You can do that by clicking the link in my bio on Instagram. You can go straight to my website and become a part of the 50% Club, where I teach you every week how to declutter so you can align 50% of your life with the goals that you want to achieve.
If you don't, I'm gonna go check that out. Because yeah, I think, a lot of us, we think we are doing certain things or going in a certain direction, and then when things don't go the way we expect or want, we feel like we're being kicked all the way back. So please go check her out. Go to her website, because a new year's approaching us really fast. And it's time for change. It's time for us to stop making excuses and saying, oh, it's nothing out there. She has great resources and services out there to help you get to the level that you want to be in. And it's not going to happen in a month. So keep that in mind. You got to work. Everything takes work. So thank you so much, Jessica, for coming
welcome.
on and educating yet again, because that's what you do. Until next time, I'm LaJune. You can find me at LaJuneSingleton.com. Thank you so much.